Joining me now live is Emily Coleman, the co-interim director of Blanchet House, and Shelley Bancroft, the director of that new shelter in Northwest Portland. Thank you both for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Okay, so before we get to some neighbor concerns about the shelter, one thing that makes this shelter different is that it's privately funded, right? It doesn't have any money from the city or the county. It's all privately funded through Blanchet House. So does that present any challenges or actually make things maybe easier to operate? Shelley, I'll start with you, and then Emily.
Yeah, we have an amazing donor base, an amazing volunteer base, and in my experience coming from Washington County, where we're under contract with the county, it does make it easier. We're able to do things the way we want to do it. We were able to design the entire building from a trauma-informed lens. So every inch of that space has been designed intentionally to welcome the women in, build relationships, and just come from a trauma-informed lens to bring them into the space.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on how this might make it easier to run the shelter now that it's privately funded?
I think Shelley touched on a lot of that really well. But it definitely, being privately funded, does come with some unique challenges as well, in that, you know, as we see increasing need and increasing costs, it puts a lot of pressure on us to be able to raise the funds to be able to remain consistent with the services we want to offer.
I mean, what's the likelihood that this could continue for years down the road, or is there a fear that this could maybe close within a year or two? I'm just throwing that out there.
I don't think we're particularly concerned about that. I hope that we'll be able to move forward with enough support to be able to carry this on as long as the need's there.
Okay, so one concern that I heard today is that some neighbors, they look at Blanchet House in Old Town, right? And they see homeless people gathered there at all hours of the day and night, and they worry that Bethanie's room could attract the same thing. Shelley, is that a fair comparison?
It is a fair concern, and we honor those concerns. But Bethanie's room is a brand new project starting from scratch, and so we're building it from the ground up. And one thing we did when we purchased this building was make sure that it had an enclosed parking lot. So people are not going to be welcome to line up on the sidewalk. We're actually going to have staff before 7 p.m. walking the neighborhood, making sure people aren't lined up. So at 7 o'clock, our queuing time is when they're welcomed into our private parking lot. And then we'll welcome them into the building at 8.
And Emily, what do you say to people in Old Town who believe Blanchet House has a negative impact on the neighborhood for some of those same concerns?
I suppose I'm sorry that our neighbors feel an impact from our services, but I do feel like it's a little bit of an unfair comparison. I think that we work really hard to make sure that we're cleaning the sidewalks around our building. Our staff are picking up litter out there several times a day. We're engaging with folks and making sure that they know about available day services, about available shelter options to them. But we're also talking about, we're talking about adults who we don't have the power to compel to move and go to do things. But more to the point, we serve a lot of folks who are dealing with profound challenges and with medical fragilities that often exclude them from some of the services that might be available to other folks. So too often, I think there are a lot of folks who have very few other places that they can go.
Especially women, right? Speak a little bit to how important it is to have a shelter only for women.
Absolutely. More than 40% of the women you see on the streets of Portland are unhoused, or rather, of all the people you see unhoused on the streets of Portland, 40% are women. And for me, one of the most striking things was learning that so many of the women were not substance users at all until they became unhoused. And then they started with stimulants so that they're able to stay awake at night, so that they feel safer at night. So it's extremely important to have shelters for women and gender expansive individuals, where they feel welcomed in, where there won't be cisgender males that they might not feel as safe around.
Right, because in those congregate co-ed shelters, a lot of women don't, or people who identify as women, don't feel safe in those spaces for obvious reasons. Okay, so I asked people in Northwest Portland today what they would ask both of you if they had the chance. So let's listen to their questions. We got 3 questions, but they all had the same question. I was hoping they had 3 different ones, but they all had the same question. So let's listen to that, and then we'll get to your response.
Okay.
My question would be, how are they going to keep the neighbors and the business owners safe from some of the things that are associated with street culture and street life?
To what extent are you willing to help mitigate the spillover effects into the immediate neighborhood? And what are the procedures? What are your thoughts on how that's going to be dealt with? And how's that going to go exactly?
What are they going to do, or responsibility are they going to take, if any, for what happens off their property caused by people that are being attracted to their property?
Okay, so this is clearly a real concern here. They're mainly talking about things that often come with street life, drug use, tent camping, break-ins even. Shelley, how is the shelter planning to respond? Beyond on-site security, beyond the parking lot where they'll be confined to, how will you address activity outside that space?
We do want to be held accountable for that. Absolutely. We want to be the best neighbors we can be. We're inside of the city's engagement zone right there, so we're working closely with Mayor Keith Wilson and with his team on that. And we are also having our staff make sure they walk around, but also our belief is if we open the doors and there's a safe, welcoming place for women and for them to store their belongings, that this won't be such a concern in the neighborhood.
What happens if it does become a concern, which we've seen happen at other shelters?
Yeah, we have a very close working relationship with the city, so we will bring them in, and we're also going to try really hard to build relationships with those people. Our staff is going to be on the streets in the evenings, in the early mornings, speaking to those people. What resources do you need? Instead of just pushing them from one neighborhood to another, we really want to get to know them, build those relationships, and help them access those resources.
Is there a good neighbor agreement?
There is. There's a neighborhood pledge. It's on our website. Okay. There's also an email on our website, bethaniesroom@blanchethouse.org. I answer that all day, every day. And there is a phone number for neighbors with any concerns or questions published on our website. And I check that multiple times throughout the day and respond to those voicemails.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show and answering some of these questions. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, well, now we want to hear from you. Do you live in Northwest Portland? What do you think about the new shelter opening there? Did anything that these women say tonight stand out to you? Let us know. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090.